chase. Now, our next presenter, you probably haven't really seen him anywhere. I mean, he wears like dark clothes and he stays to himself. I mean, he doesn't like being on camera. So it's going to be a surprise. But I do want to talk a little bit about him because I know him pretty well. We've gotten close over the past couple of months. And actually, I've known him for a couple of years. We had him on the Stormfront Freaks podcast. And he is just an incredible human being. He started out in the music industry and then moved to Oklahoma in 2012. And he was a social worker. And he has this deep commitment to wanting to help people through some of the toughest times in their life. And you can tell that when you talk to him, when you see him on video. He is just a genuine person that cares. And he is so happy. He's so positive. He's actually really bright and just an amazing human being. And he has a really important talk, which I'm really looking forward to. And he's going to share some stories that I think we can all learn from. So without further ado, Edgar, come to the stage.
All right. Wow. Skip is so cool. I want to be like him when I grow up. Andrew is awesome as well. Man, what a great event this has been so far. I mean, it's just now started. If any of you guys have been here for, since the first, maybe back to ChaserCon, but even just the first summit, like every single year, it just keeps getting better. And I was talking to Eric a little bit about what I wanted to talk about this year. And I was like, man, I would really like to talk about mental health. It's a hard thing to talk about, right? It's deep. We come here, we want to have fun. I'm like, kind of known as like the fun guy, but I really do have a deep passion about mental health, and I wanted to talk about, social media and substance abuse. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And I did want to frame it a little bit for all of you. Like, we're going to talk about some deep subjects. We're going to talk about things. None of this is like, a call out to anyone, anything like that. It just basically means that I want to find a way for us to be supportive. This isn't judgmental. Everything I'm going to talk about tonight, I've struggled with, I went through. So please just keep that in mind as we talk about it. There we go. I'm not going to be diagnosing anyone. First of all, a lot of people think that, when I come to these, we all self-diagnose, right? Anyone else just think they have, I'm a little on the spectrum, or, I have ADHD. I'm not going to diagnose you guys, so please don't take it like that. I am not a licensed social worker or anything like that anymore. I did do social work in my past. It's been from a few years away, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys know this. I also want to preface this with, I am not anti-drug. I am not anti-alcohol, but we are going to talk about those things, and we are going to talk about what happens when it becomes the only way that you can live, and the only way you can sleep, and the only way that you can chase. And I'm going to cover that a little bit because I think it's really important, not only for the younger people in the audience. First of all the young people at the summit this year, how awesome is that? The future is so bright in storm chasing. If you guys were at the outbreak thing earlier, man, these young kids were schooling the adults, and they were making all the right decisions. But then also this is for the older people as well. I consider myself old these days, and I think it's really important, even as us older people, we may be mature, but we want to make sure that we're being reflective about ourselves and making sure the things that we're doing is the best for ourselves and for our community. Yeah. So this is just about function. It's not about morality. I'm not going to try to hold moral high ground on anyone. I don't think anyone should be doing that. I just wanted to make sure to get that out before I start. All right. So first of all, I want to let you know a little bit why I'm qualified, because you're probably thinking, why is a dude that dressed like an Easter egg and always talks about branding and that's doing TikTok dances and lip syncs, why is this guy talking to us about mental health? So, so I worked as a child welfare investigator for abuse and neglect. I handled all the near deaths and death cases in my county for children. That means interviewing the remaining siblings, the parents. I did that for quite a few years. And then after that, I went on and moved to the University of Oklahoma, where I worked for the National Resource Center for Youth Services. There I trained and I developed the curriculum to teach all the social workers in the state of Oklahoma how to work with teenagers that have experienced traumatic events. And then during that time is when I fell in love with storm chasing in 2013. The beginning of that year, me and my family had to run from the El Reno tornado. I had just moved from Florida. I didn't know anything about storm chasing. It was super scary. Like I was just like, the meteorologists were telling us like, if you don't have a basement, go south. And we went south and there was deadlocked traffic and it was just a real traumatic experience. But that led to my love for storm chasing. So I started that at the end of the 2013 year in the fall. That was when I first started chasing. And I've been chasing ever since. In 2020 is when I decided to go full time. I quit working in social work then and started chasing full time. And then also still do a little work. I'm always like to have my hand like dipped in humanitarian work. I work for an organization, run an organization called Dirty Feet Missions, where we do stuff all across the world. We opened the first drug and alcohol rehabilitation center for indigenous women in Guatemala. We provide small business grants to indigenous people in Guatemala as well. And we do a bunch of work in Haiti. So that's kind of my backstory. That's why I'm talking about this. And this is kind of why I just wanted you guys to make sure you just weren't listening to somebody that had no idea what they were talking about. Like I said, I've seen trauma in families and I've seen how it destroys families. And I've also seen how trauma wears down those people that are working with those families. And I care so deeply about the chasing community. Like, I love you guys. It's been like one of the best additions I've ever had to my life since I came here, when I started chasing in 2013. And really over the last 6 years when I've really got to know a lot of you storm chasers, like I just care so much about the community. It's an awesome community. There's been tons of guests here, and the thing I've heard from people that have never been here this year is like, oh my God, everyone here is so welcoming. Everyone is so nice. And that's the truth. Like, I think you guys can attest the vibes this year have been amazing, out of this world, so friendly, so awesome. And, that's one of the reasons why I love you guys. And, I just want to make sure that we're healthy and that we stay alive and that we can chase for a long time. So, all right, let's get into a little bit of what today's roadmap is. We're going to talk about mental health first. We're going to kind of tie that into social media because raise your hand if you're on social media in here. I feel like it's the majority of storm chasers, and a lot of us are doing that for our profession. So I want to make sure I talked about that. I wanted to talk about substance use. I'm not going to ask anyone to like raise your hands if you have. I'm not that person, but I have dealt with that. So I wanted to make sure that I talked with everyone here about that as well. Yeah. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is secondary traumatic stress, let's talk about the hidden battle behind it first. Chasing shows beauty and devastation. Do you ever feel conflicted out chasing, right? You just see this amazing, beautiful tornado and like you're cheering, you're excited, and then boom, reality hits. It hits a home, it hits a neighborhood, and like your heart sinks, right? So, storm chasing has that, we're like going back and forth. It's like, oh wow, this is amazing. I'm experiencing something very few people get to see. This is the wonder of Mother Nature. And then bam, you also see the destruction of it. And what I want to, there's a lot of victims out there. We help the victims, right? If, I know all good storm chasers, if we're out there and we see something happen and there's a family in need, we help, right? And I love the positive attention. So many people Freddie McKinney was like on Dr. Phil, with that. And I love that that's like spreading a great message about storm chasing and everything that we do. But just because they're the victims there, that doesn't mean that we can't also become victims from secondary traumatic stress. And this is a real thing. This isn't something made up there. I don't have like studies listed up here, but I promise you, if you go into Google, ChatGPT, or whatever you want to do, and you want to look up information on that, it's going to blow your mind. There's so much information. So that indirect exposure can still really, really affect your nervous system. So like our nervous system, sometimes we don't even realize it is being affected because people think when like, oh, I'm experienced trauma, they think that you're going to instantly just feel some, like you would, like if it was your home that got hit by a tornado. It's not really the same. It doesn't work the same way, like on how the initial effect takes on, but it's actually doing the same thing chemically in your body at times when you're around that, especially if you're around it constantly doing things like social work. I know we have a lot of first responders here. First responders deal with this a ton as well. Let's give a hand to all of our first responders. First of all, first responders are amazing out there. And also I love that what Skip and them were just talking about, but when we talked about some masculinity and some different things like that, but I want to make sure that that strong people still can struggle. And like, I promise you, some of the biggest storm chasers you looked up to, some of the biggest role models you've ever had in your life, they also struggle with this. It is something that is across the board with almost every person I've ever met. So just remember, like, if you're feeling like this, and as we're talking about it, it doesn't mean that you're weak. And, actually, I truly believe that it means that you're stronger when you're really to kind of take on those things head on, recognize those traits in yourself, and, make sure that you work on it, and to help other people. Secondary traumatic stress is stress from indirect exposure to trauma. It can look very similar to PTSD. A lot of people have PTSD, especially a lot of people that, have fought for our country, a lot of first responders. Those people have PTSD, and these symptoms can mimic that. And very, very, very similar. And I think some of the people I've talked to that I know have like served overseas and have fought in wars, and that also are storm chasers, there are some comparisons there about what the type of emotions, the different types of things that it brings, into our brains, actually. And it's very common in helping professions, like I said, first responders, nurses, and chasers. We fit into all those categories, right? Sometimes I feel like as chasers, we're doing a lot of those things. Like, we're not just doing one or the other. We're literally out there kind of being a first responder. We're also notifying the National Weather Service, be doing preventative care as well. So like, we fit into these categories. And I've noticed that a lot, especially through paying attention to social media and having a lot of friends in storm chasing. I really, really, really see this, kind of manifest itself. What can that kind of look like? I'm going to talk about a couple of things. We have like intrusive memories, replaying scenes over in your head. I know that because as storm chasers, when we get together, what's our favorite thing to do, right? To sit around and talk about the tornadoes, the storms. I mean, it's the same thing when I did social work. Like, that's kind of how we would cope as well. Like, we talk about them. But sometimes we replay those scenes in our head and we can't get them out. I don't know if any of you have, but I've had a lot of dreams about some of the stuff that I've seen in the aftermath of tornadoes, and it's not really pleasant. And so if you have that happening, just know that is a part of this secondary traumatic stress, and it's normal. You're not the only one that's having that. I encourage you. We'll talk about how to share that and have like people in your life. But one of the things we can do that will help that is honestly just talking about it with each other. And that can cause sleep problems, cause nightmares, irritability or a short fuse. Any of you guys ever have those two things? Especially on a chase. I mean, if you have a chase partner, I always say you're not a chase partner if you haven't yelled at each other once or twice, right? Like, it's gonna happen. Like, you guys are gonna butt heads. That's just part of how it happens, but it can definitely manifest as irritability. Emotional numbness is another way that can happen. And this was like one that kind of like hits me a lot, right? There was times where I just feel completely numb to emotions. And that's a major sign that you're experiencing some of that, secondary traumatic stress. And I think a lot of times when we see these types of cues, we don't really attest to or attach it to like, hey, this is because I did this, because it's not like when it happens all the time. The dreams make you feel a little bit maybe like, oh, I know where this came from. But sometimes we don't know why we're irritable. We don't know why we have that emotional numbness. And it's really important that we, take some self-reflection and look in and really try to figure out where that came from. And sometimes even like certain footage or, certain places. I don't know if you've ever been, you drove through a town that you saw something traumatic happen in after a storm chase, like 2 or 3 years later, you're driving through Rolling Fork after you've been there that night. I know a lot of us were there. A lot of traumatic things were happening that night, but it can bring up those emotions. And I've actually seen it happen with several storm chasers. It can change them, make them act really strange and have really weird behaviors. But just know there's kind of a reason behind that. We have some really unique stressors that kind of compound each other as storm chasers, right? Isolation. Those of us who do not chase with a chase partner, we're in a car for long hours. Like, I always joke, like, all my friends and family, like, what you do is amazing. It's awesome. I'm like, you see like 2 hours of 15 of it. And the rest of it is literally me, like you're riding in a car by yourself. If you're like me, like contemplating life in your head nonstop. But yeah, we also have poor sleep, right? Especially if we're out there doing it a lot, whether it be from excitement, we don't sleep the night before, or we're like chasing back to back to back days. It's exhausting. You guys have known that. It is truly, 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 truly exhausting. And we see those graphic scenes as well. And we're starting to pile all these things. Sometimes all these things happen in the same day. And then skipping them, we're talking about that. One of the signs of secondary traumatic stress is high risk decision making. We're constantly making these decisions, right, in very high risk situations. Sometimes we put ourselves unintentionally, but sometimes intentionally, right? We put ourselves in these very, very high decision making moments, right? And that's going to stress your brain. That's going to stress your body. That's going to stress your emotions. It's going to have effect on you because, especially on those days where it's just crazy and you have to make decision after decision, and some of those are life or death. If you're chasing really close to a tornado, like we was talking about with like Tanner and Chris and those guys, that can add up on you. You're just trying to make these decisions one after another, like one wrong turn, one like I didn't leave 30 seconds ago away from injury or possible death. And then we also have a really fun protector. Anyone ever experienced being judged online in real time? I feel like if you've ever clicked on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, we've all been judged on there. But yeah, and that all those things will start leading a little bit to that those unique stressors. So let's talk about some protective factors that we can have when it comes to that secondary traumatic stress. Having a sense of purpose, I do notice this is something a lot of storm chasers are really good at, right? We do have a sense of purpose. I know sometimes you people will call us and say we're adrenaline junkies or we're chasing devastation or we just like to see stuff get tore up. That's not the case. I think it's important for us to remember that we are providing a service. And keeping that in mind, that helps us really keep that sense of purpose. We get to have real connections with people as well. That's something a lot of people don't do. So, with each other, but then have any of you guys after, I've been hugging and crying with a man that I saw just lost his car or his home to a tornado, those are real human connections, man. Those can actually lead to protective factors because that's like giving value to ourselves and the things that we're doing. It is also important to have some recovery routines, and we'll talk a little bit what that means And there's healthy recovery routines and non-healthy recovery routines. And then also having an identity outside of storm chasing. This is one of the things I always encourage people to do. It doesn't mean that you can't be a storm chaser. I know you're looking at me like, oh yeah, the guy with 45 tornado tattoos, he has some sort of identity outside of storm chasing. But I do. There's a lot of other things that I like. And that helps you jump in and out of that space a little bit where you're not constantly thinking about all those things that are involved in storm chasing that leads to that secondary traumatic stress. Let's talk about the adrenaline loop. Arousal becomes a warning, like your adrenaline, and then you have your brain seeks a surge. And what that means is you have these repeated adrenaline surges. How many of you guys experience adrenaline when you're storm chasing? I feel like, and it doesn't mean to me, you don't even have to be close to experience, to a tornado to experience adrenaline. You can experience adrenaline seeing the full, I've seen mammatus clouds that gave me adrenaline just because they were so awesome, right? We can get a lot of these adrenaline spikes. But our brain, when that happens, because it does feel good, there's a part of that adrenaline just feels really good. Our brain starts associating chasing with relief a little bit. Anyone ever said that? I just got to go chase because I got to clear my mind. I know I do, all the time. I think I say that to my wife, all the time. It's please let March come around. I need this, And that's, some of that is our brain kind of being attached to, as we start thinking, hey, adrenaline, that's relief. And then sometimes we also have big highs followed by big crashes. Like I said, I was talking about earlier, you see an amazing tornado, you're hyped, you're high-fiving your friends, there's 44 tours around you and they're all cheering and then boom, like I said, it's now we got to go do search and rescue. So that can be a very high and then a crash. But yeah, basically what I want to say is your body just literally starts craving the next surge. And I'm not going to talk a ton about that because there's also someone that's going to be speaking tomorrow about that, and it's going to be truly fascinating to talk about. So when adrenaline becomes coping, restless on your days off or chasing, restless on the off season, the calm starts to feel uncomfortable. These are all signs that you should be recognizing in yourself. If you're man, when everything's calm, I feel super uncomfortable. You need a bigger risk to feel normal. Listen, I've been in that trap too, right? Sometimes we feel we need, it's just not doing it for me anymore. I'm now I got to get 100 yards away from the tornado. I'm not saying that it's bad to do that. I think that, there's definitely, if you know how to do that and you can do it safely, do it. But just recognize these signs that sometimes if you're feeling I constantly need to be more risk-taking behavior, realize that can actually come from the traumatic stress that you've had in the past. We usually don't associate it with that, and the public doesn't, because they just look at people that do that as oh, they're adrenaline junkies, or they're just in it for themselves. That's not always the case. It's usually a direct effect of some secondary traumatic stress that they've had in their life. And it really shows because it almost feels like chasing becomes emotional regulation at that point. All right, so let's talk about sleep for a second. Who likes sleep? Who didn't get enough sleep last night? Exactly. Me, I definitely did not get enough sleep last night. But sleep is so important, not only to our physical body, but to our mental health. It is literally our body's time to reset. So it's really, 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 really important. It also can affect our mood and our judgment, our decision-making abilities. I know us prepping for the National Storm Chaser Summit, we were a couple nights before, we were all in a room trying to do stuff, and me, Holly, and Eric, and it was just like, our brain just stopped working, right? You ever been in that moment where it's no sleep and all of a sudden your brain's just like, all right, I can't even think. I've typed the same line 3 times on this PowerPoint. I got to stop at that point. And it's hard to regulate those emotions without that proper rest. So even like I'm like on a few hours of sleep, my voice is going, but it can be hard. It's harder for me to regulate emotions. I'm sure most of you can relate to that. As you get tired, like you pop off a little bit easier. You might yell at your spouse or your significant other. It can become a real problem. And I did want to mention something around caffeine. I'll talk about it again in a little bit, but caffeine's not a bad thing, but caffeine timing matters when it comes to sleep. Even if you're someone who takes a lot of caffeine, just remember caffeine, even if you can fall asleep, is disrupting your sleep later on in the evening. So be careful about that for sure. Let's talk about social media now, everyone's favorite subject. And like I said, this was something that I really wanted to talk about, and I was really worried about talking about, but I feel like it's something that has to be talked about in our community, the way we conduct ourselves on social media, the way we let social media affect our lives. Social media can create amazing connections between each other, us. It can create connections between us and our audiences that are watching us. It can create isolation. Has anyone been looking at social media before and just felt really, really isolated after looking at it? I know I have, like a lot. Social media is just a tool. And so I don't look at it, a lot of people, social media is bad or the devil. I don't think social media is bad or good. Social media is a tool. The way that we decide to use it is what makes it bad or good. And we're all responsible for that. And that's what I want to talk about right now. Let's talk about some of the things that might affect us a little bit in a bad way. And that's social comparison. That means followers. Like, this person has more followers than me. How can they have more followers than me? I've got way more tornadoes than them. They got double the followers. Recognition. I've seen a lot. Even the National Storm Chaser Summit, right? Like sometimes, like Storm Chaser of the Year, that's always like a controversial topic, right? But getting that recognition, like we're comparing ourselves to others when we do that. I'm not saying that this is bad. Like I said, I'm just saying these are things that you need to think about when you're thinking about why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Viral moments, of course, like, we're comparing ourselves to the viral moments of other people. Like, oh, this person has more sponsors than me. How can I've been chasing for 30 years. Why is this guy that, been chasing for 2 years, he gets like this massive sponsorship? Those are the types of comparisons. And like I said, if you don't think I have those thoughts in my head, you're wrong. But we need to recognize when we're having those thought patterns and how that's kind of affecting what we're doing. Your comparisons, I promise you, can drain joy faster than anything. Have you ever been chasing and you saw an amazing structure of a storm, and then 15 minutes later you open X and there's 400 people that just posted the tornado of the year, and your heart's just just instantly are sad, right? That can drain your joy. Right before that, you were so happy because you just saw the most amazing sunset structure you've ever seen, but instantly your joy gets ripped out of your heart because the tornado of the year happened down the street. That's happened to me, I feel like, every year since I've been chasing. So it's just part of it. All right. So other thing, when we're comparing, we see people's especially when you talk about chasers that are doing it full time. So we're seeing them post videos and we're like, oh my God, I'm not as good as them. One thing you got to remember is they're posting their highlights, and you're comparing the highlights of their life to every part of your life. You don't see all the down. You don't see all the bust. People don't post about their bust usually, and so you're trying to compare yourself to those things, man. That's those people's highlight reel. And you're getting down on yourself because you feel like you're not meeting that level. And that's mainly because you're just seeing the best of them. And that's not just about storm chasing. That's just social media in general. People post about all the happy moments, and from social media side, you're like, oh my God, that person looks so happy. They have the best house. They have the best spouse. And that's just because they're only telling you the stuff they want you to hear. And it's always really important to remember that my timeline in storm chasing is different than your timeline. We all have different timelines. Like some people just jump into it really fast, and that's okay. Like they just go from never chasing to chasing 100 days a year. And then some people are like, you know what, I'm just okay with chasing, taking my vacation for 5 to 10 days, and that's all I want to chase. That doesn't make you any less, or it doesn't make you any better of a storm chaser. Sometimes I feel like that pressure it puts pressure on people to feel like they have to do more, they have to do less. Just remember, everyone has their own timeline, and that's 100% okay. Different paths look really differently. I mean, you can even look at that from I even think of let's talk about really popular chasers, and you read Timur and Pecos Hank, right? Both amazing storm chasers, do amazing things, but they don't have the same path, right? If you compare their content, it's not really the same. But they're just two different people. They're both amazing storm chasers. They're both awesome. They're just two different paths, and that goes the same with each and every one of us. We all have our own timeline. Don't be trying to jump on someone else's timeline. Don't be comparing yourself to someone being like, oh, I got to do it like they did it. No, do it your own way. I mean, I talked about that a little bit last year in branding. One of my mottos is find out what everybody else is doing and then do the exact opposite. That's just kind of but that's my timeline, right? And then you guys may have your own, and ladies may have your own timeline as well. Everyone's path looks different. It's okay to have a different timeline and a different path. So I'm gonna talk about this for a minute, and this isn't gonna be fun. But this is something that's happened so much in the storm chasing community, and I feel like it has to be addressed, and I'm not gonna say I have all the answers, but if we don't start talking about it, it's gonna be issues. How many of you guys have said this statement out of your mouth, oh my God, the storm chasing community is toxic? If you haven't said it out loud, I bet you've said it to yourself. I mean, you can see people post about it. And I want to talk a little bit about things like public pylons, and talk about what that means. A public pylon is where someone does something bad, and it doesn't even have to be about storm chasing. Honestly, this could apply to politics or whatever you want it to apply to. So you see and then all of a sudden, someone starts calling them out, I feel like the way it's usually phrased is we're holding people accountable. And we really need to think about what holding people accountable means. And is that what we're actually doing? Because sometimes I think we might have the best intentions initially, but if it's not changing behavior, then I wouldn't say you're holding anyone accountable. You're just, like I said, sometimes you're just piling on. Someone does something and everyone's just starts hammering that person. Oh my God, I seen on your stream you were going 110 miles an hour down, a country road. And then it quickly turns into everyone in the community making posts about it. You don't even know this person, or maybe even you do know them, and you're just making posts about them over and over again. Man, we really have to work on that. I mean, I understand that we do have to hold people accountable in our own community. That's super, super important. But let's talk about why and how that we do that. A lot of the times we're shaming people instead of correcting them. And those two things are very different. If you've ever been a parent, if you've ever had children, you can recognize if you're shaming your children, you can see a very different behavior instead of correcting them. Correction and shaming aren't the same thing. And a lot of the times we lump those two things in a category and we call that accountability. And it's not the same. It's 100% not the same. One of the things that I really noticed is there's a time where it kind of flips over and it almost comes more entertainment disguised as accountability. Or it's more clicks disguised as accountability. Oh, I know this is a hot button topic, and I bet I can get 400 reposts on X right now if I jump on this bandwagon and attack this person. You really need to think about yourself in that moment. Are you really doing that for accountability? Because I'll be honest with you, I don't think you do. And I see a ton of people talk about mental health in our community, right? And my thought of it is if I'm on there piling and adding to it, I don't have any right to go on social media and talk about mental health when I was someone that was being a direct cause of it, maybe in a different person. No one ever thinks that they're actually causing harm to someone, right? No one ever thinks that they're making someone crash out. But that's how it happens. You don't feel guilty in the moment because you just feel like you're helping or you're doing something like that. But that's how that kind of stuff happens. So the next time someone in the community does, commit suicide or has a drug overdose or something like that, I personally don't want to see the people that were on there piling and talking trash about people talking about mental health at that point, because that's just a word. That's just what you're saying. That's not what you're actually doing. And like I said, I don't think it's always intentional, but I think it's really important that we have that self-reflection and make sure the reason why we're doing it. And I really do think that we can do better as a community. Like I said at the beginning, I love the storm chasing community. It has changed my life. And like almost every person I've met, even the ones that like online, you might be like, oh, they're a little of a jackass. You meet them in person, you're like, oh, they're a great person. Like they're awesome people. One of the reasons I love this event, it's the only event where someone 3 weeks ago could have been talking trash about you and then will ask for a photo with you the next day. That's literally kind of what it's like there. But our community is so good, and I just know that we can do better. And like I'm speaking to myself in this. This is something that I want to get better at. This is something that I've struggled with in the past, and I'm really trying to work on and make sure that when I'm doing this for the right reasons. And we always hear chasing for the right reasons, right? We should also think about posting for the right reasons. I think that's a very, very important thing that we should all talk about. Thank you. So let's talk about community norms for a minute. These are the things that we can do. This is my motto: praise publicly, correct privately. I'm not saying that you can't, there isn't time for correction publicly, but man, if you know that person, why you got to post it out to the world? First of all, let me ask you, what happens when you feel like a bunch of people are attacking you? Because if you're like me, I just dig in, right? Like that's your natural response when anyone's coming at you. When you have people coming at you from all angles, that's what happens. But I will say in almost every instance that I've decided to publicly or privately reach out to someone with an issue I had, you gain more information about each other. I might learn something about them that I didn't know because we don't always know all the circumstances. And then they're more likely to change their behavior that way than if I'm just going to call them out publicly. A lot of the times we're so interested in being right that we don't have any interest in actual change. And like, I'll say that again, like literally we want to be right so bad. We just rather be right online than actually changing the behavior that we're criticizing. So if you truly think about it in the way that you really want to change someone's behavior, reach out to them privately, have a conversation with them, because I promise you they'll probably be willing to talk to you, and it won't feel like they're more likely to not dig in and just punch back. Because that's what I do. I don't know about most of us. I won't say that. But me, like if a bunch of people coming at me, like, well, I'm about to dig in and go after them. But if someone reaches out to me privately, I'm like, yeah, you know what, man, I did mess up. That was messed up. I need to do something better. And then I usually end up making a friend out of someone that I maybe wasn't even a really close friend, because you kind of share those moments with each other. You're like, all right, yeah, you did kind of help me be held accountable. Now let's talk about substances. This also is not always the most popular thing, right? We're at the Storm Summit. We're in Colorado. Lots of substances out there. A lot of gummies. The whole lobby smelled like gummies last night. Lots of alcohol. And I did want to preface again, like, guys, I'm not anti any of that. I think everything in moderation, and everything in moderation is different for each individual. I just wanted to say that again before we start talking about it, so you don't feel like I'm calling you out. I'm not. You're like, oh, Edgar saw me drink 6 shots last night. Now he's saying this. It's not about that. I promise. And I'll say this, like most people that are doing, substances, right? The most part isn't like they're trying to get like belligerent or high, right? Like most of the time, like even for me, especially I can speak for myself, I was like usually trying to calm anxiety or maybe have fun. It wasn't like I was like, like we're not intentionally trying to like get plastered most of the time, even though sometimes happens. But usually trying to calm ourselves or trying to sleep. This was a big one for me. I got my medical marijuana card right when it came out in Oklahoma, because I had been a lifelong smoker. And, from my whole life, I told myself I couldn't sleep without it, right? Trying to stay awake. We are going to talk about caffeine too. Like I said, caffeine's not bad. It's actually can be a very useful tool. It's amazing for workouts. It's amazing for getting your brain, going. But let's talk about when it does become a problem. You're trying to escape like thoughts and memories. A lot of people use that. I know when I did child welfare, I got really heavy into drinking, because at night I would see messed up stuff. You have to look at child autopsies, stuff like that. That messes with your brain, I promise. So at night, one of the fastest things I could do, I was like, yep, if I, drink a half a bottle of vodka, I don't think about that anymore. So I'm trying to escape thoughts. It wasn't like I was trying to do so damage myself or damage other people, even though it led to that. I wasn't thinking that way at the time. And usually most substances start as solutions. And I'm not saying that they still can't be solutions, but they usually do. Like when we're using some of these substances, it's starting out as an actual solution, and then it turns into something else. Like I said, no shaming again. And they're solutions until they become problems. And if anyone has ever dealt with addiction or they've had any issues with that, it's a solution until it's a problem. And sometimes it's a problem, we don't even realize it. And this is more about like how we function. Like I said, not once again, not anti-drug, not anti-alcohol. It's more about how we're functioning on those things. Yeah, and I would like to like frame it as more of like this conversation of curiosity over condemnation. So we're just trying to be curious about ourselves and each other. Be curious about why you're using substance, and be curious why your friends are using substances instead of just being like and condemning them or condemning yourself. Super, super important. So let's talk about when use becomes abuse. All right, so there's a couple things that can kind of give you some red flags in yourself or when you see with others. You start using despite any negative consequences they may be causing, like you're going to keep doing it. Like, you know that when you use, there's negative consequences. Like you're like, I drunk text everybody every single night and get myself in trouble, like, but you keep doing it. Like, that's kind of the situations I'm talking about, right? Or, you just like every time I drink alcohol, I get in a fight. That's what I'm talking about here when I'm saying using despite the negative consequences. Same thing with, with marijuana, like, or caffeine. Those can apply to all of that. Another sign is that you can't, reliably stop. Like, how many people that have ever dealt with that, I can speak to myself, is like, man, I can stop anytime I want. That's like the number one thing that you hear people say when it comes to this. But can you really? Like, is that something sometimes we just tell ourselves? Because I feel like if you're starting to have to tell yourself that should be a red flag and a cue for maybe you might have a problem with whatever you're doing. Because that means I feel like inside you're already thinking about that. When your life starts revolving around it, this was big with me whenever I used marijuana. My life would literally be wrapped around it. Like, I can't go around people unless I smoke weed. I can't go to sleep without it. And to the point where if I didn't have it, I would start having an anxiety attack, be like, oh my God, I'm going to be around people and I don't have this. And it just doubled the anxiety. Those were some of the red flags that I should have recognized back then. They're like, hey, wow, I should not be, this is a little bit more of a problem than I thought it was. And I've noticed that, and you see this with a lot of other drugs. I'm not going to talk about a lot of the harder stuff. I'm not saying that that's not an issue. We have a fentanyl crisis in America. Opioids are doing a lot of terrible things as well. And you normally think about those things when you're organizing your life around that, because you hear that about people that are using, oh my God, they can't go, 8 hours without, taking, a pill or doing some fentanyl. But that also can happen on a smaller scale, even with alcohol, marijuana, caffeine, nicotine as well. Here's the only way test. This is a test that I think all of us should adopt. I love how Skip always has all his tests and models. And so this was kind of something that I thought about when it comes to substance abuse that we could all ask. The only way test, if you can fill any of these things, the only way I can sleep is, and if that accuses a substance, we might have an issue that we need to deal with. I can only chase if, might be a problem. I can only feel okay if I do X. Those are big warning signs, y'all. Those are big warning signs. If you find yourself starting to say those things, like I said, this is not me putting you down. I literally have said all three of those things about multiple substances in my life. But if you're starting to say those, just have an honest conversation with yourself and be like, wow, let me take a look. Some of those things, like I said, in moderation, marijuana has been very effective at sleep for some people. But I really, truly believe if you're doing that, you need to be doing that under the advice of a doctor and all those types of things, because it has a lot of other negative effects, just like any other drug that we take. If you get a prescription, they all have negative effects, right? If you have pain pills, you get itchy, after you, if you have a dental work or something, it's really important to have some guidance there, because it can really slip into that. I can only do this if. So if that's ever the case, think about that. Let's talk about alcohol for a minute. I know a lot of you are this probably feels like anyone's older than me, they remember DARE. Remember DARE? I came to your school. I was like, I don't want this to sound like DARE, because it's not the same thing. They were like, if you drink one sip of alcohol, you will die. And that's not what this is about. But listen, we can be realistic about what alcohol is. It's a depressant. And I think the biggest reason alcohol can be an issue is because it's legal and socially normalized, right? No one thinks twice about seeing one drink a beer or take a shot. So that can make it a little dangerous, right? Because we put our guard down more towards it, but it is a depressant. It 100% does disrupt sleep. Even when I was talking about when I was in child welfare and I had to drink to go to sleep at night, I promise you that sleep wasn't good. And you guys have like I got an Oura ring, or like if you have like a watch, smartwatch or anything like that, it's really cool to like give you your sleep score. And like, I would like sleep for 9 hours, but my sleep score would be like a 50 out of 100. So sometimes we think that those help, but it does disrupt your sleep. Alcohol can definitely worsen anxiety and depression, not for everyone, but if you start recognizing that it does it for you, keep that in mind. And like I said, think about yourself, do some self-reflection. And it can feel like it helps short term. I truly felt like whenever I would drink alcohol often, that it helped. When I say often, like every day, every single day after work, it felt like it was helping for the most part. Same thing with marijuana with you, honestly, and it really does help some people. But for years, like 20 plus years, I had convinced myself that it was helping me. But then, once I stopped, I was like, holy crap. I was just using that as an excuse. Leading right into cannabis, it helps some people sleep. It really does. It also hurts some others. Just remember, if it can help someone else, all of our body chemistry is different. The way drugs affect people is different. So like it can help some people sleep. It can definitely worsen sleep for other. One of the big things I always taught myself, like I said, I couldn't go in public. Like I thought my anxiety was attached to I had to have marijuana to not have anxiety, and I didn't realize how much it was adding to it. Like this is the first Storm Chaser Summit that I literally was like not completely stoned out of my mind. And this is the first summit I haven't had zero anxiety. Like, I mean, literally, like it's like, that's something that, it's just really true. Like, but if you would have asked me before then, I would have told you 100 times. I would have told you that, I could not be there unless I did this. And then this year I'm like, oh wow, like I was so wrong back then. It feels like, it feels amazing to not have to be reliant upon that. Your dose and frequency matters. So holy crap, if anybody's older as me, weed from 35 years ago, I promise you is not the same as weed now that you can go buy at a dispensary here. Like it's literally like I remember when I first started like smoking recreational marijuana, compared to like the weed that you had to buy like in my early 20s and late teens and stuff. When I say like one joint is like smoking like 100 joints of what is happening right now, or taking like I remember like taking like a 5 milligram edible, when I first started, and I thought that was like crazy. And now you can buy them like in the 500 or 1000 milligram capacity, right? So it's not the same for us. And I say just know your personal pattern. I'm definitely not knocking anyone that smokes marijuana. Almost everyone I know, I think, does. And I don't think less of them. I think a lot of them really, truly use it in healthy ways. I was just someone that wasn't using it in a healthy way. So it's just really important to understand your personal pattern, why you're doing things. I think that's like the most important, like look at yourself. So let's talk about caffeine for a second. Caffeine is also one that seems super, super harmless. It's a super useful tool though. I had to stop doing caffeine like after I got COVID for some reason, because I got tachycardia. I don't know if you know what that means. It's like just a constant high heart rate. And so I had to quit caffeine. And actually the last sip of caffeine I had was at the 2022 Storm Chaser conference, because I realized like every time I'd even drink like unsweet tea that had a tiny bit of caffeine in it, like my heart would race. I could get up to like 120 and 130 beats per second, or beats per minute. Beats per second, I'd be dead. Like even just sitting down. But so it can definitely wreck your sleep. I think all of you know that, right? You ever taken a drink like coffee late at night and they're like, why did I do that? Like 3 o'clock in the morning, you're still on your phone. The other day I had a really funny instance. I posted about it on social media. It was kind of the opposite. I like take all these vitamin gummies and stuff, and I accidentally had them next to my melatonin gummies and I wasn't paying attention. So like 8 a.m. I took 10 milligrams of melatonin gummies. That was the worst day I think I've had in a really, really long time. But the caffeine can definitely wreck your sleep. And it's really easy to underestimate the impact, because like it can still be affecting you 3 to 4 hours after you've had it. So it's just something to like consider if you're having sleeping problems. Like I know like if you go to any doctor about sleep problems, that's probably the first question they're going to ask you, like, when do you stop drinking caffeine every day? And man, caffeine also, I talked about weed getting crazy. Caffeine's crazy, like Celsius and all those other ones. Those things will get you going. Like I said, probably better to use those in the morning. And then let's talk about stacking. So a lot of the times, like you have all these individual things, but if you're like me, like at times I would stack all these, right? So I would like use caffeine to chase in the morning, right? We get up, got to have our cup of coffee, got to drink our energy drink. that gets our nervous system going. We chase all day. Our adrenaline's going. We're pumped. We get back to the hotel. We can't sleep. What's the next thing we do? Let's go to the bar. Let's go smoke a joint. Let's eat a gummy. And then we're like, man, why do I sleep like crap? Sorry. Like, why did I sleep so terrible? My biggest fear is that I'm going to cuss way too much in this. And I've done so good, I haven't even said that was almost the first time. And then like we do it and you got to repeat it the same day. You didn't sleep well. So then what happens? You wake up the next morning, more caffeine. And that spiral builds up, especially if you're like chasing, like you go take your 2-week chasecation or whatever. And that spiral over those 2 weeks, you're like doing that same over and over and over. Your sleep's continually to get, like go lower. Your sleep score is just dying, and you're just like tired. So that's when you start to get irritable. You're like, someone like stops like with 2 tires on the road still. And you're like, I'm going to get out of my car and kick their car right now. Like, I've seen the most passive aggressive things happening during storm chases, and those are things all that are super, super dangerous. And a lot of those can happen because we're stacking those substances. So one of the things that we can do, like what do we do to like harm reduction? Because like I said, I'm not anti any of these things. I'm not telling any of you to stop. That was right for me. It's not right for everyone else. But set personal limits for yourself. We all know our limits. We all know which drink number makes us go overboard. When you're in Colorado, it's way, way lower, by the way. And then the high altitude really increases how any substance really affects your body. I would definitely say, please don't drive impaired. And that can be, you can drive on caffeine, of course, but you know what I mean? Like with alcohol and marijuana, please make sure you're not driving impaired. Make sure that you're eating and hydrating, especially if you're using like alcohol or marijuana or caffeine. Staying hydrated is like a key. Like, man, having like a lot of water in your system. Dehydration causes a lot of really harmful things about our physical body and in our mental health. I think it's really important to build non-chemical wind down routines every night. And that's kind of what I've done. Because I'll be honest with you, when I first quit smoking marijuana, I couldn't sleep like for a really long time. Now my sleep's better than it's ever been, but I had to start building a routine, and that really, really helped it for me. It was like, I would watch like a certain show or a series that I knew would like turn my mind off, and I would turn my TV off at a certain time before I wanted to fall asleep. And like I would eat a melatonin at night at a certain time, and setting up those routines really, really helps. And you can reduce the risk without quitting. Like it's a spectrum, right? And so don't think about it as like, I have to, like if you don't have a problem, you don't have to quit, but think about that spectrum, reduce the risk as best as you can. So when to get help, if you're hiding it, it's always a sign, man. Like, and I was hiding it. Like I would tell some of my close friends, but I wasn't telling like, oh, like you're eating like 300 to 400 milligrams of edibles every day, along with killing like a vape pen every day, or, like you start hiding those things. That's an issue. You're scared of your use. Like you start scaring yourself a little bit. That usually happens once you start getting pretty heavy into it. And that's a really, really, really red flag that you probably need to slow down a little bit. People are close to your concern. What's crazy is I didn't realize how many people close to me were concerned because a lot of my friends didn't tell me. Maybe that was because I didn't give them the space to tell me. So I've really tried to work on that in the future. But like when I quit smoking marijuana, they're like, oh, Edgar, we were worried about you. Like we come over your house and you just be catatonic all the time. And I was like, man, yeah. And I didn't think about that. But if you're worried about people, if you notice friends, family are concerned about you, another red flag. And just remember, like, you deserve support. This isn't a shame. It isn't bad. Like, you literally deserve to have the support of your friends, your family, and everyone. So I know it's really hard to say that, when you're in the moment, but really, you really do deserve support. Like everyone does. Everyone deserves to be happy and healthy. And just remember that you deserve that support. The community care model that I kind of came up with was if when you're noticing changes in people, let's talk to them about it. Normalize talking about your struggles as much as you can. That's one thing that I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be very open about being here and telling everyone that I was a 25 plus a year, marijuana user, like I didn't skip a day in 25 years, like no joke. Like being able to say that is not easy at first, but I understand that there may be some people in here that are like, oh, like that's me. Like if Edgar was like that, like it's just better if we can talk about it. It makes it more comfortable, the more open conversations we can have. And the storm chasing community can be really rough around that. I always say nudge people towards support. Don't push them off a cliff, right? If you notice your friend or family's doing it, the best thing, you don't want to go up to them and just tell them, you're ruining your life. You got to stop. It's the same thing with the social media. They'll probably dig in and not support. But, you can start nudging your friends to support. And a lot of the ways you can do that is by being open about your struggles. yeah, and we don't have to be therapists to care about our friends. Like, you're like, I can't talk to them about that. I'm not a licensed therapist. You don't have to be a therapist to talk about your friends. We talk about everything else. You can talk about that with them. The 3 best sentences that you can have to someone, and I'm almost done here, is, I'm glad you told me, you're not alone, or how can I support you? So if you have friends that come to you and tell you about an issue, these are 3 sentences I'd encourage you to take down. None of these 3 sentences are coming at anyone. And these 3 sentences can really, really help like how someone responds to you, because they're going to be way more likely to listen to you if you have these. And these are the things that I encourage like my friends, like, hey, if you see me messing up again, like, here's some things. I'm not going to get mad if you ask me this way, because those simple words can save people's lives. We can support people online through this and storm chasing by lifting good behavior. Don't amplify pylons, like I said before. I will say we're really bad as a community, especially on X. We call people out online, but I don't see very many people talking about the good things somebody does when they do it, right? So as a community, we can do those things. It'll make it better for all of us. Like I said, another reminder, I always say DM before posting. Like, send people DMs, like, talk to them on it. If you really want them to change, do that. And yeah, we can kind of shape our culture how we want. This is my post-chase decompression. Make sure you eat, hydrate, sleep. I go for a walk. Exercise is huge for me now. So those things can really, really, really help. And then last, a buddy system. I always encourage this. We all have chase partners, friends. Like, ask one of your friends to help hold you accountable for certain things. That includes substance abuse. That includes, going at people online. Like, have people put you in check. And I don't have to have 1 or 2. I'll encourage all of you to do that to me. If you see me doing something that I'm like, oh, Edgar, that seems harmful, like to yourself or like harmful to other people, like, tell me. Like, I will say, just like everyone else, and right in the moment, it might take me a little while to come around to it. But if that's like, when that's called out, I ask you guys to do that. And I encourage you to find someone that'll do that. Agree on signals, like, say, hey, if you see me doing this, make sure that you like correct me. And I'd rather have people do that, and have friends in my life that I have to do that as well. And give each other permission to speak up. Give your friends and that buddy system, be like, listen, I'm going to try my best. I can't say not. I'm going to try my best not to be mad at you if you bring this up to me. All right, here are a couple resources that you guys can have. You can write them down. That helpline, that's 1-800-662-HELP. I feel like I was going to put a bunch of stuff on there, but we all have smartphones that can give us information. Yeah, there's plenty of information out there. Findtreatment.gov is great, and everyone has local mental health protectors. I want to say this before I leave. I am very, very, very pro-therapist. I talk to a therapist. It's not weak. It doesn't make you less of a person. It actually makes you such a stronger individual if you have a therapist that you talk to. And yeah, final thought. Chase hard, care harder, and we can get better together.